Hi, everyone. I'm Spencer Pauly here today with Tim Clauser, the Center Square's Eastern Washington reporter. And today we're talking about one spicy city council meeting over in Spokane that spanned about 7 hours or so, resulting in only half of Mayor Lisa Brown's plan to overhaul Spokane's strategy to end homelessness. And that was passed on Monday night. Now, Tim, before we start, can you just provide a brief overview of what this homelessness overhaul plan is and what we're at right now?
Yeah, well, the city's been looking to overhaul its approach to homelessness, or how it plans to mitigate homelessness, for well over a year. The council held a series of community roundtable discussions throughout the fall that really led to the content of these proposals, I would say. Mayor Lisa Brown proposed 3 of these 4 ordinances back in the end of April, the very beginning of May, and 2 of those passed last night. Now, one of the more controversial ordinances, which would replace Prop 1, a voter-approved camping ban that the state Supreme Court struck down back in April. That measure did not pass, largely due to a provision that would have required law enforcement to require up to a week's notice before clearing an encampment. Now, residents came out en masse to the meeting last night, as you can tell, with it lasting over 7 hours, largely to voice their opposition to this proposal. Now, service providers were also there voicing their opposition, more so due to the ordinances criminalizing homelessness, providing mechanisms to cite these individuals. But yeah, initially the council rejected that new camping ban, how they're going to replace Prop 1 after hearing so much testimony against it. But then, after the majority of residents who testified left City Hall due to it being almost midnight and stretching well after, the council asked to reconsider. And then the council majority ultimately amended that notice period from 7 days down to 3 days and brought it back up for a vote, essentially doing exactly what many of the people who testified asked them not to do.
Okay. Now, I think that's important to note there, because one of the biggest words that was in this article of yours is the phrase dirty politics. Now, that's the accusations are being thrown out by, I believe, Councilmember Cathcart, right? So when we're talking about what specific actions he's referring to, is it that change right there at midnight?
Yeah, essentially that. I guess you could say more so just how this full process has played out altogether. Cathcart sits on the council's conservative minority with Jonathan Bingle. Both of them represent downtown, where most of the people who are homeless are residing. So they proposed several measures last summer that would have emphasized enforcement for the existing camping laws. But almost all, if not all, of those proposals were rejected by the progressive majority, largely due to them criminalizing homelessness and questions around Prop 1 and what would happen with the Supreme Court. So they weren't happy with what turned out on Monday. I mean, throughout these community roundtables that I talked about, a lot of residents came out to support the proposals that they put out that the majority rejected. So it kind of seemed like, there's a clear path to get these codified, as long as the majority is willing to support them, like residents are asking now. It seemed like that was going to happen when the council initially voted to reject the mayor's proposal on Monday night. But then they switched course. And in doing so, Council President Betsy Wilkerson said, hey, look, business owners didn't like the 7-day period. They asked for a shorter waiting period, referring to this 3-day amendment. Now, there was a community member in the back of the gallery who stood up immediately and said, look, this isn't what we're asking for at all. We don't want a waiting period. There was others who accused the council majority of going into a back room during a short recess period that the council had because the meeting was so long.
And that's where the collusion were.
Yeah,
I heard collusion, right?
Yeah, they claimed that some of the council members had called Mayor Lisa Brown or her office and strategized to say how they could bring the ordinance back up for a vote, which ultimately did happen. Aaron Rifkin, he's a local business owner. He specifically said, look, I saw Councilmember Paul Dillon upset over how the vote turned out. And then he went into the back room. He alleged that Dillon made a phone call. And then when they came back out, they asked to reconsider. And he looked to Navarrete, and then Navarrete proposed this 3-day amendment, even though she had just rejected the initial proposal.
So Navarrete was the one that changed her vote. What insights can you share about, these pressures within the council that may have influenced this shift? Are we trying to get this done as soon as possible? Is there a time constraint here?
It wasn't just Navarrete that changed her vote. Betsy Wegerson, the council president, also changed her vote. So it was ultimately 5-2, all of the majority against the two sitting on the minority. So, in terms of what might have motivated this, the council majority was already largely in support of the notice period, or at least how the camping ban was originally written, but they were responding to community feedback. Now, there's a large push in Spokane.
Tim, the community feedback, the one person stood out and said, this isn't what we're concerned about, is that 3-day period now, right? That was the amendment, right?
Yeah. And the vast majority of testimony was against the notice period altogether. But there were a few service providers that said, look, we're not so much against the notice period, but just against the mechanisms within the ordinance that allow police officers to cite homeless people. Regardless of how it's written, it's a camping ban. It might be loosely written to maybe make enforcement difficult at times, whether that's intentional or not. But it's still a camping ban. So there's people for and against it. And there might have been business owners that came to Wilkerson and said that, but that was not the sentiment on behalf of much of the testimony Monday night.
So, Tim, here we have business owners pushing for a hospitality zone, right? And then we have service providers suggesting this designated camping area with support services. Now, I'm wondering how feasible these proposals are, but did the council address them during the debate at all? What were some of the pros and cons that they were weighing? And this is a 7-hour period. I'm sure they talked about that, right?
Yeah. So there was a bit of agreement there, and Wilkerson noted this as well. She was like, look, usually the business community and service providers are against each other when it comes to the matter of homelessness, but both were in agreement that they would like the council to find an area where camping is legal and there's services nearby so these people can get drug treatment, housing support, etc. So they did talk about it. Councilmember Jonathan Bingle, he briefly mentioned, maybe there's some areas in unincorporated Spokane County where we can create an area where these people can live and they have services nearby. The issue is just making that happen. It's a hard thing to make happen, especially within city limits in this metro urban area. But if you were to do it in another jurisdiction, that would require the support of those municipalities. And it's not something where the city can just say, oh, all of a sudden we're going to take this half-mile block and create a legal encampment. A few years ago, we had Camp Hope in Spokane where there was hundreds of people living out of RVs and tents in this little lot. So the city definitely doesn't want to end in an area back like that. But a lot of the downtown business owners, they talked about, creating this hospitality zone where essentially camping would be outlawed altogether there, except for maybe a few circumstances. So there's a big emphasis on just enforcement in general downtown. And that's due to the loss of business that some of them are seeing. They're saying, look, if you don't take a bigger stance downtown, then you're going to miss out on tax dollars. You're not going to see as much tourism coming into Spokane, spending their dollars there, which ultimately goes back to the city government, who's facing another deficit this year after one last year. So It's
I can tell
definitely
you,
something
Tim,
that
we talk about, from a downtown business owner's perspective, like I can just relate here in Seattle. Let's say, for instance, there's Third Avenue, right? And so Third is this long corridor where there's a lot of open drug use, there's homelessness. And while, maybe they're not actively doing crime, it is still just an uncomfortable area to walk through. So people skip that. And so now you see a lot of empty storefronts, a lot of graffiti, and it just is this weird, I don't want to describe it so dramatically, but a desolate wasteland of an avenue, right? Because of just how they've taken over. So I can understand how they would probably want to move people, just ban people from living or, camping there, just because they're trying to have people come into their businesses and boost up tax dollars, like you said. Now, I want to move on here just because this was one thing here. Now, the Washington Hospitality Association described the council's actions as bamboozling the community. Now, this happened last night over midnight, so people are still just waking up at the time of this recording, not really sure what happened last night as we record this. But, I'm concerned here about how this could affect public trust in the Spokane City Council. And, are we at a tipping point here with public trust? I mean, based on your observations and previous reporting, are we going to see another 7-hour council meeting in the future about this?
I think it's safe to say that we're going to see another 7-hour council meeting, whether it be on this, the budget, or something else. I mean, the council has been divided over homelessness for a long time. This isn't a new issue. We saw similar issues last summer with a lack of transparency, the council majority not looping the council minority in on everything. I mean, when the mayor initially proposed these 4 ordinances, she held a private press availability with certain outlets in Spokane the day before she had even told the council minority. The council majority met with Brown shortly before she held another press conference the day she announced all the ordinances, at which point then she told the minority about them. But she didn't give them copies to take home. It was actually me that gave the council minority copies of these ordinances initially, not their peers in the majority, not the mayor. It was us. So, I mean, there's obviously an issue with at least a lack of coordination, if not a lack of transparency.
It's going to divide. That's going to divide the council here a little bit more,
Yeah, I wouldn't say that right now is a tipping point. I think if we're looking for a tipping point, we're already past that. I think a lot of people are hoping that, regardless of how this turns out with these homelessness ordinances, the council's been talking about this for well over a year, and it's largely the most divisive topic in Spokane, not just for the council, but for a lot of residents. So I think there's hope that when the council passes things, whether it turns out, I guess, to the tune of what the majority or the minority wants, they'll be able to move past this, at least for now. They'll be able to say, hey, look, we passed these policies. We're going to have to wait a little bit, assess our data, see what's working, and then maybe we can move forward from there. But I think there's hope that once these do finally pass, no matter in what way, that it could settle some of the division. Will that happen? I'm not sure, but I guess there's
okay.
hope.
And then that's the final vote on this camping ban was delayed to June 30th, correct?
Yeah. So with that amendment in place, they then delayed a final vote on that ordinance and another regarding aggressive solicitation to June 30th. So in about 2 weeks, the council will reconvene on that. We will likely see a lot of fiery testimony on that, and we'll see what the final outcome is. I mean, they could pass it with that 3-day amendment, even if there's a lot of testimony against it, or they could listen to the people and I guess vote along to what they're wishing.
Right.
But we'll find out on the 30th.
On the 30th, Tim, I know you'll have an energy drink in my hand here to get through the the long council meeting ahead. So, thanks again for talking with us here about this topic, and looking forward to future reporting. And to watchers, listeners, and viewers at home, thanks for doing so, and see you next week.